MN.live.
ABC News, I'm Daria Albinger. Vice President Harris and her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, are on a bus tour of Georgia. Walz speaking to students at Liberty County High in Hinesville.
It's not a cliche. This is truly about building towards the future, and you're that future. And so when we're in a room like this, it lifts everybody's spirit, it lifts the country's spirit.
The tour will visit rural areas of the battleground state. It will end with a rally in Savannah. Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance in Erie, Pennsylvania, defending former President Trump's visit to Arlington National Cemetery to mark 3 years since the deadly U.S. drawdown from Afghanistan. He also blamed Harris for the deaths of 13 U.S. service members. The FBI says Thomas Cook, the man who attempted to assassinate Mr. Trump, had research dates of both parties' political conventions.
We've seen no definitive ideology associated with our subject, either left-leaning or right-leaning.
Special Agent in Charge, Kevin Rojek. This is ABC News. Construction underway on a new Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas.
Robb Elementary is where an 18-year-old gunman killed 19 students and 2 teachers before he was shot to death in 2022. On Tuesday, a charitable foundation headed by Dolph Briscoe IV donated $10 million toward construction of the new, as yet unnamed school.
Primarily, our goal is to honor the victims and survivors of the tragedy.
The centerpiece on the new campus will be a tree paying tribute to the students and teachers killed at Robb. Jim Ryan, ABC News, Dallas.
New recruiting programs will help the Navy meet its goal of signing up 40,600 recruits by the end of September. But so many enlistments means the military branch won't get everyone through boot camp by next month. Now underway in Paris, the Paralympic Summer Games. 4,000 athletes with physical, visual, and intellectual impairments will compete in 22 sports over the next 11 days. Daria Albinger, ABC News.
Hey, checking in?
This is not just your flu shot appointment at Walgreens.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is getting your entire family vaccinated in one trip.
Hey, Mom?
And a snack on the way out. Get flu shots for everyone in your family, together. Schedule appointments online today. This is wellness made easy. Walgreens.
Vaccine subject to availability and for ages 3+. State and health-related restrictions may apply.
Whether you own a local business or a global one, you know that these days, generating growth is a challenge. By teaming with Bank of America, you'll not just stay ahead of the curve, you'll move it. With access to experts, award-winning insights, and business solutions so powerful, you'll make every move matter, locally and globally. Visit bankofamerica.com/banking for business to learn more. What would you like the power to do? Copyright 2024 Bank of America N.A.
The views and opinions of the following show do not reflect those of WSMN, its owners, and/or associates.
Welcome to the Common Sense Conservatives, a political discussion group about current events and other government-related matters every Wednesday evening from 7 to 8 p.m. Right here on WSMN 1590 AM, WSMN 95.3 FM, and streaming live on WSMN.live. Making sense of the inverted reality we are subject to every day, the Common Sense Conservatives are here to help bring you back to reality. Now, your hosts, Chris Wyatt, Todd McKinley, and John Glovin.
Yeah, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Common Sense Conservatives. If you're listening to us, it's Wednesday night, 7 p.m., broadcasting live out of downtown Nashua, New Hampshire. We got an awesome guest waiting in queue for us, but in the meantime, we're going to pass the ball around the table here a little bit. You might get that little pun here in a bit. Todd McKinley out of Northeast Tennessee. How you doing today, sir?
Oh, not bad there, John. How do you read me, my friend?
Pretty good.
Yeah, you sound a little under the weather, and I'm getting a different angle tonight. So
yeah.
You don't look like you're in the Bat Cave tonight, but I'm here in New Orleans at the American Legion National Convention. And caveat off the commercial we had there about the Navy, talking about the recruiting, we had some the Navy Recruiting Command and other folks here briefing, talking about some of their things they're going to be working on, trying to recruit new folks to the military, Navy, Army, and others. So quite interesting. Tomorrow, the last day, and I'll fly back, be back home. But looking forward to our guests tonight. I think it's going to be interesting. But I kind of did a little calculation. I think the colonel has mentioned he has 34 years, something in the military. Between us, we have 82, almost 83 years of service. So it's going to be interesting.
Oh, wow. I didn't even contemplate that.
Yeah, and imagine the security clearances that each of us held, and then of course the information we've all had access to. We're not going to get into that, but it's kind of interesting, of course.
Yeah, so the Chi-Coms are looking. Look here tonight. You get your counterintelligence
Right,
folks
yeah.
busy because you got some people that have had access to the highest levels of power. 36 and a half years, Todd. 34 in active duty.
So,
30.
So we're pushing 85 years now. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, John, that's better. We got the correct camera angle now. Now we can see you. Make sure that you're not misbehaving on camera. And you do sound a little bit under the weather. But listen, hey, as I loaded this up, you guys, the software we're using here now allows me to stream, even though I'm not the host. So while I was waiting, I got bored, and I'm streaming it to my YouTube channel. So tonight, let's not talk about any Rona fantasies or conspiracies or any stolen events from 2020. I don't want to lose my YouTube channel just because I'm testing this out, but I'm looking forward to our guest. I think it'll be safe in the first hour. By the way, I don't know if we got the old tape loaded up, but it said for every Wednesday from 7 to 8, it's 7 to 9, folks. You're not getting cheated out of that second hour.
No, not at all.
Absolutely. I don't think they changed that in the website, if that's what you're talking about. I didn't realize you didn't know, Chris. It's set up so that you can link your own stream. I didn't even think to mention. I'm so sorry, man. I should have mentioned.
No need to apologize. I mean, I have an account with it's StreamYard. I've had an account with them forever, but they just didn't provide the service I needed back in the days I started streaming early on. So I've kept the account, but I don't really use it. I'm a guest on a lot of programs that use it. Plus, we use it here. But I had noticed that I could do that previously, stream to my accounts. I could have done it, to one of them. And if I pay the fee, then I can stream to multiple. But I did notice recently that now they tell you get local recordings is enabled. But I mean, I try to find the recording. It's nowhere. It isn't on my it isn't on my computer.
So as the origin of this, I got to set it up that way. I got to click that button, and that will allow you to record off from the web browser, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been about a year or so they've been doing this now, so it's pretty good stuff. But anytime you're ready, guys, unless Chris, did you have something more you wanted to say, or?
I just want to answer every question tonight by leading with the following statement. First, we're going to win.
Yeah.
What did I miss?
But I don't.
Every time Cackles is asked the question, that's the first thing she says. What about Donald Trump's policy on the board? First, we're going to win.
All right, but
you can do it.
I did promise our guest tonight we're not going to do politics in the first hour, so he can talk about it. The book, his experience. Bob Ronkin, of course, Navy Bob is his nickname, given that nickname by President George W. Bush. He was a military aide to President George W. Bush. In other words, he carried the nuclear football, also commanded a nuclear submarine, I believe nuclear-powered submarine, and amongst other things. But here he is, Navy Bob. Sir, please introduce yourself to our listeners and, of course, our host here.
Well, Waka Todd, it's such a pleasure to be here. And Chris and John, such an honor and privilege to be here on your channel. And so, like you said, I spent 28 years in the nuclear Navy, not as long as Chris and yourself, Todd, but 28 years. I spent 8 years of my life underwater, not consecutively. Thank God.
That's a long dive, 8 years straight.
Yeah, he's Aquaman.
So I got bored one day and I looked at all the different deployments and at sea time, and it was 8 years.
Ooh.
And after 28 years, I commanded the USS Texas. It was the second nuclear fast attack Virginia class submarine, and it was the USS Texas. And then I went. My final tour was the Commodore Squadron 7. Submarine Squadron 7 out of Pearl Harbor. And I was basically in charge of 10 nuclear fast attack Los Angeles class submarines. And so then during that time period, as you mentioned, I carried the nuclear codes for President Bush. And I was there from 2006 to 2009. And then I got out and uniquely went into healthcare for 5 years. And you might want to, why did I get into healthcare? We can talk about that later, but I teach as a professor at UCF, University of Central Florida, leadership, quality, safety for the Masters of Healthcare Administration. I also got my doctorate degree in business administration at Rollins College right here in Winter Park. So again, love to talk about my book and my findings, and just an honor and privilege to be on the show tonight. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I usually like to turn it over to the Colonel because he has a lot of, he's a published author as well and a writer, U.S. Army War College instructor. But I got a question for you. And I know President Bush loved to give nicknames to people. And then, of course, some of his staff members gave me the nickname Waka Todd, which stands for White House Communications Agency Todd, because of all the different Todds that worked in his administration. And it was funny. I didn't think he actually knew my name. And one day I was standing outside the Situation Room after picking up a briefing for Vice President Cheney. And he walks in from over at the Eisenhower building and he goes, "Hey, Waka Todd." And I was like, he does know my name. So it was interesting. He knew everybody, I thought.
Yeah. And so, Todd, in this book, my book, Beyond the Sea, Leading with Love, from the White House, from the nuclear Navy to healthcare, there's at least three chapters and taking you behind the scenes and not talking about the politics, but it really was behind the scenes on how President and Mrs. Bush led. And there's no other way to explain it after I reflected on this, but it was with love. And those nicknames, as you said, he had a nickname for everybody. And, it was from Shakespeare, it was, Waka Todd, Navy Bob, you name it, everybody that he finally knew had a nickname. And that was a sign of like, I care for you. You're important. You're feeling valued. Yes. And here's the leader of the free world that he takes the time to recognize you. And that is a sign of love. And you mentioned, about how the Navy is struggling with recruitment. And if you look at, there was an article or a study by McKinsey in 2021 during the Great Resignation and Great Attraction. And what they found is the reason this generation is leaving their jobs by far, it's 4 times as much, is they didn't feel valued. And so, leading with love, as I talk about in this book, that is the greatest tool this leadership and this generation of leaders could ever use to be able to increase their outcomes, increase their retention, increase their safety, everything. That's what I love to talk about here.
Absolutely. And I'd love the Colonel if you want to jump in, Colonel, right away, lead the questioning, and then we'll kind of do the round robin here in just a moment.
Sure. No, I just need to state up front that I feel aggrieved. President Bush didn't give me a nickname. Even Skippy would have been acceptable, but I do blame it on the Secret Service handlers because they were going through DTs when the president was talking to me in Monrovia. So there wasn't time for a nickname. I'm just saying, but I feel a little bit aggrieved. But seriously, Navy Bob, I got to say that one thing that I've noticed. Now, you got out a few years before me. I just retired in 2015, 2019. Excuse me, 2019. You got a decade before me. But you still got your hair color. I'm losing mine. But yeah, so one thing I noticed is, and I don't want to give a blanket statement, but I saw a prevalence of this. And let me get your thoughts. It was a decade prior. And I think that's a decade where things began to turn as the stress of multiple deployments into Iraq, Philippines, Afghanistan, at sea, really began to take their toll on marriages, on families, on soldiers, and the stress and just all of it. But I did notice what I would argue is far more leaders in uniform who are less genuine and more concerned about themselves than about their troops, their sailors, their airmen, their Marines, their Coast Guardsmen. That was my personal experience. I'm not trying to throw a paintbrush out there, but did you see anything like that? And did you see it begin before you retired? Because to me, it was an alarming trend. And right now, there's actually a voluntary recall to the Army, and I'm not going back. Not because I don't like the Army, but because I'm very concerned about the state of things, and I can't change it as a colonel coming back in active duty.
So Chris, this is the first time I've ever been asked this question, but
I tend to do that to people.
But off the cuff, just answering your question of what I feel without doing any research, I couldn't agree with you anymore. So I don't know if you ever heard of the Admiral back in the 1990s. His name was Big L, the sailor's pal. His name was Admiral Konetsky. And what I experienced back in the 90s in Pearl Harbor on board a submarine, there was never this feeling of camaraderie, of culture back in the 1990s. And what he did, one of specific example that I use today, was he mandated rope yarn Wednesdays for the entire submarine force, which meant at 12 o'clock on Wednesday or whatever day the ship, at least once a week, they were going to allow the sailors to get off, to get haircuts, get their uniforms taken care of, take care of personal items, whatever appointments they had for the dentist or doctor. This is the dedicated time that you're going to take care of your sailors, which he put policies in place that you're going to take care of sailors. and his nickname was Big Al, the sailor's pal. And you felt it, just like you were talking. This is in the 1990s, 2000s in Pearl Harbor. Now, you hear leaders, their main focus is war fighting, lethality, right? This generation, they don't, I wouldn't say care about it. They care about if you're a leader that's going to care for them. That's what their major concern is. And if you look at the number of spouses that supported the family of a military member back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, I would say, I don't know the statistic off of my top of my head, but there was such a larger percentage of spouses that supported, the husband. Now, probably 40, 50% of the workforce are professional females that are married to military members. And the system has not changed. So how can you blame a family that wants to get out when the deployments are now, 9 months, and you have more to do with less, and all they're talking about is lethality is the number one goal. And I couldn't agree more on, what your hypothesis, Chris.
Well, it's something I noticed. Now you mentioned what Big Al was doing there, but in the Army in the 1980s, they came up with sergeant's time. And that was time dedicated every Thursday to give NCOs a chance to work one-on-one or in a small group with their troops, which I'm sure the Navy did something similar. In the afternoons, they usually had soldiers' time on that day. So the soldiers got to go do the same things that the Navy was doing there. And that became really an excuse as we got into the 90s, and by the aughts, it was really just an excuse to close community services, because you would get off on soldiers' time and all the community services are closed because it was sergeant's time, except none of those agencies had any sergeants. They were all civilians. So to me, we could see that the focus on the total team was disappearing already. That's the point I'm getting at, the genuineness of the support structure around the military and the institution itself. And it just kind of concerns me. I do got to ask you one question about this, though, before we go on with that. In high school, the only service that came recruiting me based on my TT score, which was pretty good, by the way, was the Navy. And in 1981, the Navy recruiter asked me to enlist and offered me a $20,000 enlistment bonus. I think it was a 6-year enlistment. And I said, what do you want me to do in the Navy? He said, I want you to be a submariner. And I said, so you want me to go to sea for 6 months at a time and sleep in a hot cot, sharing it with someone else? I said, where's the appeal in that? Now, I honestly said that at the age of 16 to the Navy recruiter. He laughed. He thought it was funny, but I had my chance to join the Navy and I turned it down. And in 1981, living in rural Appalachia, when I didn't have the $25 to apply to go to university, I had to get that waived by the university. Turning down $20,000 is a big deal. That's not a slight on the Navy. That's just telling you how little I want to be in a submarine. So much respect to you, Bob, for the time you put in under the sea. That's a pretty scary thought. I mean, as a historian, I grew up reading about the wolf packs and submarine battles in the Second World War and just all the challenges that it takes a lot to be a man or woman to go underwater and to trust everything around you and to trust that team, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. And so I have a similar story. When I was getting in the Navy, or I was graduating high school, Top Gun was out. So there's nothing more I wanted to be as a pilot. And when I started to apply, I found out that I didn't have 20/20 vision, and there was no waiver at that time, PRK or LASIK, to be a pilot. So I joined the Merchant Marine. I went to New York Maritime. It was in the Throgs Neck, underneath the Throgs Neck Bridge in the Bronx. Wow. And while I was there, just like you, I had this Navy recruiter, because 1/3 of all the Navy officers that come in is through this program called NUPOC. 1/3 is through ROTC, and 1/3 is through the academy, because they just need the different diverse selection or pool of talented people. And so this recruiter came up just like you. There was a PowerPoint presentation at the time. It was an overhead projector with the sheets. They said, she says, as soon as you sign up, you get this bonus. As soon as you finish this thing, you get this bonus. When you retire, this is how much money you're going to make. I walked out of that and I'm thinking, they're trying to sell me waterfront property in Idaho. I'm like, there's no way I'm joining the Navy. But then my roommate at the time really wanted me to go to Norfolk for a free trip to see an aircraft carrier in the submarine. And I had no intention. So I went down there. I toured the aircraft carrier. I thought it was neat, of course. It was just this incredible piece of machinery, but I didn't feel the camaraderie. But when I went on a submarine, the stories about going behind enemy lines and doing, vital missions, vital to national security, obviously with no details, but just feeling the culture of just this wanting to be part of a team, that's what sold me. And that is one of the greatest gifts of the submarine force. So Chris, I completely agree with you, and you're right. And you know, I'll turn over to you, but one of the things that in my book that I talk about is that we were behind enemy lines and we were a stone throws away from an adversary submarine, and we were in their backyard. You know, you can imagine a 377-foot submarine cloaked beneath the ocean, and the only thing that's up is the periscope. And we're focused on this event, and there was multiple different combatants out there. And what was at stake if we did find us? It would be like throwing a rock at a beehive. All of a sudden, it'd come out, and they would try to force us to surface by any means. It could be safety related, where they could cause us to surface and maybe lose the ship. But if we didn't get this, it would have cost the taxpayers about $100 million. Each Virginia-class submarine is about $2.2 billion. And the cost of this mission and so forth. And so we thought, so we unexpectedly had some plane fly right over us. I talk about this in the book. And I was about to get out of there. But it was my XO that spoke up and said, wait, you know, let's see if they have us. And he was right. And the only way I can explain why that was underneath those incredible odds and incredible, you know, like pressures, is he did it because of love. And I know it's kind of like, you know, that's, you know, it's kind of like I get asked, why are you saying love? But I can explain more. What this world needs and what this military needs and what every industry needs is love. And we've lost this in today's generation.
Somebody's dinner ready, or
Yeah, getting a ding there.
That's a permission to board, Captain. That's all right. Well, you know, and you said love, and my first thought, the word that comes to mind is trust. Trusting your teammates. I mean, love comes with trust, so I think that makes a lot of sense. You know, I think a lot of people don't realize that, Bob. It's important to consider. You know, as Army, Todd and I, we fly into a place, we either parachute or we land, or maybe we come by sea. That's less often, but we do, and we arrive. And it's all clear. We know where the boundaries are. Even those who can't read a map can figure out where the bullets are coming from. But when you're under the water, that's a huge challenge. You know, I memean, you're communicating by extreme low frequency, you know, and you've got these communications at long distances that the signal has to travel so far, under, through water, all these barriers. And I think right now of the South China Sea and the Scarborough Shoal and all that's going on there, where these Philippines Coast Guard ships are being water cannoned by the Chinese Coast Guard, all that's happening down there. That's above water. You can see what's going around. But your sailors are inside, forgive the expression, a tin can, hundreds, if not thousands of people over the surface. And, you know, sometimes they just disappear like the Kursk, you know, and then, gosh, I mean, it really must take a lot of character to hold a team like that together. And not just for the commander of the vessel or the sub, but for everybody on the team.
Yeah. And, you know, again, Chris, I've obviously, you know, after being underwater for 8 years, I've seen a lot of things. I've tracked multiple submarines, saw multiple events, had close calls. Something just read out of the Hunt for Red October, exactly the same. But what I found, why I wrote this book, is I rode almost every single submarine in the fleet. I was a prospective commanding officer, and I would embark on these different submarines, plus the amount of years that I spent on the submarines. And you couldn't get more of a homogeneous environment than in the nuclear submarine force. Everyone goes to the same leadership schools. Everyone goes to the same tactical schools. You operate the same equipment, and you operate, you know, the same procedures. And yet there was such a profound difference in performance of some of these crews. And so my hypothesis was it was leadership and culture. You know, I don't want to go into, some of these submarines are, you know, getting presidential citations for some of the things they're doing for national security. It's just eye-watering what these submarine crews can do. But then you hear other things about running into Japanese fishing vessels or running into a seamount. And clearly there was such a difference in culture. And the foundation, the greatest strength of this high-risk situation and environment is the people. And the greatest ingredient for success, there's no doubt in my mind, is love. And love builds trust. When the best definition of trust, you had mentioned trust, is the best definition during my academic research of trust is having good intentions and to follow up with your words with actions, which means if you don't have good intentions or you don't love somebody, they're not going to trust you. They're not going to believe, you know, if they don't have good intentions, But the second part of trust is you have to, as a leader, love isn't enough. It's the foundation, but you have to follow up your words with your actions, which means if you say you're going to do something as a leader, you have to do it or you're going to lose trust. So we can go on forever with this, but this is the foundation of every leader needs to hear. And it is applicable to the military. You think about, me carrying the nuclear codes, in charge of a $2 billion nuclear submarine, going to war with torpedoes and Tomahawk missiles. Love isn't part of the equation, but I couldn't disagree with you more. And one of the great examples I use is when I deployed as an XO on board the USS La Jolla, we had a dry dock shelter where a SEAL delivery team went underway with us. And when you think of Navy SEALs, do you think of love, right? You think of just ruthless killers, right? And if you look at it, they're just machines. They're like, some would say they're just not human. And I couldn't respect them anymore. But the example I give is when we deployed with La Jolla, the lone survivor was happening with that team. Michael Murphy was part of SEAL Delivery Team 1. And when we're ready to get underway, they found out about what was happening in lone survivor with Michael Murphy. And, obviously for the audience, if you haven't watched the movie, but I hope all of you have, Michael Murphy knowingly sacrificed his life to make a phone call on Iridium phone to rescue his team members. And fast forward 2 years later, when I'm now the military aide to President Bush, I'm supporting President Bush on stage, posthumously providing or giving the Medal of Honor to Michael Murphy's parents on stage. And you know who was in the audience? It was Marcus Luttrell, the lone survivor. And there wasn't a dry eye in the audience. But my point is this: there's no greater sacrifice than to give one's life for another being. And you can't characterize it any other way other than love. And then when you think about what Michael Murphy does and what every other SEAL would do, for their others, there's no other way to talk about the love in that organization. And you think about the SEALs are one of the most successful organizations that have ever existed. So if you can just create love in any organization, I'm not saying you have to kill for your employees, but just have their back at the cost of your own. And when you do that, your outcomes will go up immensely. And I talk about that in the book.
Well, we're talking to Navy Bob, and I've not pronounced your last name yet. So if we're going to see if I get it right here, Ronska, is that how you pronounce it?
That's correct.
Oh, well, that's not bad. Not bad. It's Eastern European, throws me off a little bit there. But we're talking to Navy Bob Ronska and his book, Beyond the Sea, which is available on Amazon, by the way, and at his website, navybob.com. I think there's only a dozen copies left at Amazon, so you got to rush out and get it, folks, if you want to get it tonight. Yep. But you talk in the book. Let me ask this specifically because let me relate something. My experience in uniform is that leadership makes all the difference in the world. And I'm not just talking about the leader, the top leader. I'm talking throughout the ranks as you go down, because there's different levels of leadership, and even individual soldiers and sailors can actually lead by example and sometimes change the focus of an organization. When IBM was run by John Akers, the company was going to be split up in the early 1990s. And then they announced that Lou Gerstner was coming to IBM, and I got all excited. And it's full disclosure, I'm an investor in IBM, have been since John Akers' days. And instead of selling my shares, I bought more with what little money I could scrabble together and do it. And the reason I did is because I knew that Lou Gerstner was a great leader. I had seen what he did at American Express as a vice president, what he did at RGR Nabisco under very difficult circumstances. And I had read about people who worked for him and about his genuine concern and his interest in what everyone in the organization was doing, trying to find out how an organization ran and make it better. When Lou Gerstner came to IBM, the argument in the investment community was, oh, this is a disaster. He doesn't know anything about computers. And my argument was, a great leader doesn't have to know about that technical that thing. In the U.S. Army, you've got the people who are thought of as great thinkers like General Petraeus. But that's one side of the coin. You can be a great technician, a great statistician, a great strategist, but you have to be a great leader. And great leaders don't have to have those things if they can rely on the team around them. Was that your experience in uniform? You didn't have to be the smartest person in the room all the time on everything?
Yes. So, Chris, thank you. I think you're exactly correct. And so my experiences throughout, and in the book, I talk about how I learned leading with love in the workplace. I learned it from Captain Grooms. He was one of the Centennial Sevens and he ended up being a vice admiral, and we still talk today. And he showed me how to lead with love. And so when I took over the Texas in July, the crew was not performing. It was like every day was whack-a-mole. It was something new every day. I didn't know when and where, but it would be something new or a different thing. And when we had a major incident, I knew that I couldn't continue playing whack-a-mole. And what was at stake is we're taking this new Virginia class underneath the North Pole to certify that ship for Arctic operations. And when you go into the North Pole, it's like 28-degree water, and all the condensation comes out, and it's falling on these highly energized panels with upward vent holes that can go on these microprocessing boards that control the reactor. And there were days the ice was too thick that you couldn't surface. And when you can't surface, you can't use your emergency diesel generator. Your only source of power if you lose the reactor is the battery, which lasts about 2 hours. And then if you lose the battery and you can't get the reactor up, you go the distance. Your only option is to get the reactor up. And if you can't get the reactor up, you die, right? It's just the same thing with the Kursk.
Man, 2 hours. I guess I won't complain about EVs anymore. At least you can go a couple hundred miles on those.
Right. Wow.
But we're also, having to go through, there was icebergs that we had to go past. There was other adversary submarines coming out with us. But my biggest concern was the culture of the crew. So when we had that major incident, I knew that I needed to focus on the crew. And I started this thing. Really, it was something simple that I learned. It was a crew top 3. I just went up topside and says, what are your top 3 concerns? I needed to find out what the crew was struggling with. And I didn't know. And when I asked them, I had a stack like this. And one of the things that I found out, there wasn't sufficient number of computers. Half the computers on board were broken. And on a Virginia class, everything operates off of a computer. It's something out of Star Trek. Any work controls. And what that entailed was about 2 hours of extra time each sailor had to spend on board that they couldn't be with their families because there wasn't sufficient computers. So I immediately got new computers that day. I went to different ships, went to the squadron. I went up there and I told the crew, I am so sorry. I love you. I care for you. This will never happen again. We got new computers. That was the spark that changed this. We went in 2 years to the lowest performing ship in the squadron to the best ship in the squadron of 10. It was a battle lead boat. We had the highest retention, lowest turnover for 2 consecutive years in the Pacific Fleet. And we scored the highest engineering exam possible, where we almost failed it right before I got there. And going back to your point, Chris, it wasn't because I was the smartest person. It wasn't because I was the best tactical. What I did is I put all my effort into the relationships, the love of the crew, and the crew took care of the ship. And what I found, there was a critical point about 2 months into it, about the time when we got to the North Pole, is that the crew no longer was fearful of making a mistake to get in trouble. They were fearful of making a mistake because they didn't want to disappoint the ship or those people around them. And at first, I knew why we're having all these issues, because the crew didn't care for the ship. And the reason why the crew didn't care for the ship is because the ship didn't care for them. And this is applicable in any industry. If you don't put your people first. And at the end, what really told me this, Chris, is at the end, I continue the crew top 3 every month. And at the end, the stack went from this. My last one, there was one concern. And then one concern was there wasn't sufficient variety of hot sauces on the crew's mess or mess text. I said, if you get to that point where that's your biggest complaint,
you're all right.
You're doing good. You're doing good. So going back to your question, Chris, I couldn't overemphasize this more. Mr. Rogers has this famous quote, love and success. It has to be in that order. It's that simple and that profound. You have so many leaders out here today, 90, I don't even put a percentage on it, but it's just profound. Their main focus is productivity, results driven. But if they don't understand, what they don't understand is if they put their efforts first into the crew, like I did, your productivity, your results, your innovation, your collaboration will skyrocket. It will exceed all expectations. It's that simple. It's what Mr. Rogers says. Concentrate on your people first, and then results will follow. That is exactly the recipe for success with leading with love.
Absolutely.
Well, it's I'll just take one example from my experience and share it and relate it from your perspective there and give you mine. I don't know if it was just by happenstance. I don't think it was. I think it was intentional. But I wound up going to a lot of places that were broken. I'm suspecting that's because I had a reputation for fixing things, or they were trying to get rid of me. I don't know which, one of the two. But one thing I can relate to is I go back to Uganda, and it's the small things, the simple things that matter to show to your team that you actually care and that they matter and that they can have impact on the team. So I arrived in Kampala, and we had a large organization, but a small staff, but we had tentacles all over the place in health programs, HIV, Ebola research, all being funded by Walter Reed and National Institutes for Health, all these different things, plus our military training and our special forces. We were training for so much going on. And what I quickly discovered is I said, okay, so who all works for me? That was the first question, and who do I have to answer to? Who works for me? And they're like, well, this guy over here, we fund his position, but he doesn't come to our meetings. Why not? He's part of the team. We're paying his salary. I mean, I'm not trying to impose on him. I'll talk to the people because he sits in the public affairs office. Let me just talk to him, go over and meet with him. I'll talk to the public affairs boss and say, listen, he's supposed to be working for us. I mean, what kind of division of labor you got? He's part of the team. And the fact that I even went over and talked to the public affairs guy, he appreciated that. And then the guy who actually was being paid by us loved it. And we energized our public affairs and public relations just like that. The same with the Ebola research program, our HIV program. None of my predecessors had ever once gone to the local NGOs that we were funding. I went there and they just, their jaws hit the floor. And it was genuine. That's what I'm getting at, Bob. I mean, it's genuine. And sometimes it just takes little things like that. And the payback on that to this day, I left Uganda in 2013. I still get messages from my former staff who still work at the embassy. And I look, I'm not boasting, but I still get this, Colonel Wyatt, why did you leave? Why aren't you here? Because I had to. It's what the Army does.
So, Chris, what I've done and why, you're a great leader. Just talking to you here for the last 20 minutes, I know you're a great leader because that how you focus on the people. You found out the success. This is not taught in leadership schools today. It's not. I teach leadership at UCF, and it is just. It is just remarkable to me how we haven't cracked this code yet. It's all about people and why this, just like my story, you have multiple stories just like that. Now I hear this, leading with love, your outcomes, there's a no downside. When leading with love, you generally care for your people and you treat them like people and not objects. All your outcomes will go up immensely, results across the board. You become a legendary leader, just like you said, Chris. Those leaders that I remember today, there was one thing in common. They cared for me. I will never forget those people. And the people that didn't care for me, I couldn't even remember their name. Mm-hmm. So what kind of leader is that? And then I'm sure you had, a field of dreams model. I'm sure that when you commanded and you had this word out that you cared for people, there is this internal drive that you want to go work for somebody that cares for you. You will build a field of dreams model where you don't have to recruit and you don't have a high turnover. You build this with leading with love. People are going to come to you. And so lastly, why I put this together, Chris, like you, I had this theory, if this is the way to do it. When I got my doctorate degree, my first class was about theories. What is a theory? And one of the theories they use, as a joke is that somebody came up with a theory that every time the rooster crows, the sun rises. And so they're like, oh my God, this guy's brilliant because look at the rooster's ruining the sun's rise. He's got to be right. But the academic world will be able to flush that out. They're really true to see if this phenomena is a theory or not. And, sometimes the sun will rise and the rooster doesn't crow. So like, well, this isn't true. And academic would fit. But one of the theories that I was first assigned to was this theory called leader-member exchange. And when I read this theory and what it did, it's over 50 years of academic research. And in there, it is exactly what we did. It concentrates on the people. And this theory is if you build relationships, authentic relationships, you don't concentrate on yourself as a leader. You don't concentrate on your subordinate. Your main goal is to concentrate on this authentic relationship. If you do that, right, you will increase outcomes. It's proven for over 50 years with evidence-based practice. Your outcomes will go up exponentially more than anything you could ever do for yourself as a leader, of communication skills, of how you look, or what you can do for your subordinate. And when I read this theory, it was exactly what you and I did. And we really need to spread this out in the industry to show them that love is the answer and building this relationship is the key for leadership success. especially today, like we talked about when we first started, it's not about war fighting. Yes, war fighting is important, but if you put war fighting first and you don't put the people first, you're going to not have the people there to fight the wars. So, these leaders that are so brilliant, they're missing it. I don't understand why. That the key to success is put your people first. And if you put your people first, the mission will be accomplished.
And I kind of saw that. I'm going to ask you another question in a second, and then turn it over to my colleagues. But I kind of saw that when I went back to university after I left the Army as a non-commissioned officer, went to college, joined the Ohio National Guard, and I was in an air defense unit. And there were guys that were still using the same M42 Duster anti-aircraft track vehicles that they took to Vietnam. This is the 1980s, late 80s. We have actually transitioned out of those to Hawk at some point, just before I left. But the point is that I went to unit and I was a little taken aback because I was very by the book and anal retentive about military discipline and everything. And it was a bit lax, and I was a little uncomfortable with that at first. You need a haircut, you need to, the uniform needs to fit a little bit better. I was a little uncomfortable, but I quickly came to realize, as I observed as a young cadet, because I was a sergeant and then a cadet while I was there, that it was about the people and their interactions and how they work together. And that unit was incredible. We would go to gunnery up on Lake Erie, and you're only supposed to shoot down one or two of those remote controlled aircraft, but then they'd shoot them all down because they were just that good, because they worked together, because they had each other's backs. And it kind of dawned on me before I got commissioned, and it stuck with me. But what I want to ask you now is about Beyond the Sea. And that's a line from a song, if I recall. Somewhere. Anyway. That's right. I thought I recognized that line. But seriously, I don't know if that inspired the title, but let me ask this question. Without jeopardizing sales, and maybe this will push sales, but what was the most challenging thing that you discussed in the book? What was the biggest challenge you faced? I'm sure you must have put something in there that was a challenge. And if that's something you don't want to talk about, then tell us about the most rewarding thing that was in the book.
I'd be happy to, one of the things in this book, I related out. I wanted to, I had, leaders that, I mentioned, you can't learn from good leadership. You can learn as much from bad leadership as you can from good leadership. So there are several chapters in there about, toxic leaders and apathetic leaders, and some of them are still around. And I made the decision to make sure that it was accurate beyond any doubt. But I did that because these stories need to be told in a complete, transparent way so that the audience knows that if you act this way, this is how you're going to have other people think of how you're acting, right? And it is a awareness book that really shares good and bad leadership stories of how to lead with love, and when you don't lead with love, exactly how you're thought of. And so it was painful, because I know when people read this, they're not going to like it. But for the greater good of what they did, and a lot of times, I even say in the book, they just didn't know. And so going back to the title Beyond the Sea, exactly, it was inspired by Bobby Darin's song. Yeah. But what I also did, because I spent 5 years in healthcare, I thought it was just unique to the submarine community or the White House. But it's not. It isn't. This book is applicable to every single age and every single industry. And that's why I called it Beyond the Sea. So one of the tough things that I did talk about is that I had a minor stroke about 2 years ago. So I talk about that in the book. And, I'm fully recovered, but it really changed my perspective on life. And the second thing, I was bullied as a kid. It's hard for me to write about and talk about, because I was an overweight kid. The Polish, thing of love was to feed your kids, like eat as much as possible. So I was a really overweight kid, and I was bullied in high school. So I spread everything out. And my father died by suicide, and that was one of my toughest days. So I laid everything out. I think that the greatest gift is that when I first started this, it wasn't titled Beyond the Sea or Leading with Love. I thought that love was not even, but as I did more and more and more research, that's where I came up with the topic. And so through this iterative process of 4 years of reflecting back on my life, through my childhood, to my college, to military, Beyond the Sea, there's no doubt in my mind that leading with love is the answer. And I shared that story with the SEALs. And as I reflect back, and one of the things that really is profound with this is if you really want to have love, the greatest definition of love is sacrificially giving yourself for the benefit of others. It's in the biblical terms. You could see, some of the greatest leaders, they sacrifice themselves for the benefit of us. That's love. And in the academic research of LMX, there's an LMX 7-question survey. And one of the scales, the questions is, would you, bail out your subordinate at the cost of your own? It's love. And I talked to Dr. Grain, who came up with this. So there is very little research in the industry on leading with love, but it is so much in the religion world. We need to take this same role. I'm not trying to push religion in the industry. I'm taking love, only love, and putting this in leaders, which I know that works through academic research of over 50 years and yours practical experience.
No, it's a fair point. I'm going to turn it over to John here in a second because I know he's just dying to ask you how often you attempted to open the football and launch the weapons. But I know that's coming. That's a question he's going to ask you. But watch, that'll be exactly the question he asked. I set that up really well. But it's fascinating to me, Bob. You talk about things, and I've told people I had a pretty horrific childhood for a variety of reasons, which I won't go into. But what I tell people, they're very similar circumstances. Now, I wasn't chubby. I was rail thin and moving constantly, sometimes spending a week or two at a school, and then moving to the next school, and always an outcast, always trying to fit in. And that's probably why I became so flexible and adaptable, because I had to survive. But in the crucible of hard knocks in your childhood, it either makes you or breaks you. That doesn't mean you're complete, but it sounds to me very similar circumstance you've dealt with it. Also, well, I said I wasn't going to say, but also dealt with suicide or attempted suicide as a child. A very shocking event for me under the age of 10, dealing with that. Me being the medic for someone who tried that was insane. But I mean, it either makes you or breaks you. And out of that crucible, I think that maybe before you give it to John, maybe you could just answer this quickly or not. To me, because of the circumstances of my childhood, I believe I developed empathy for others so easily because I knew what it was like to be the person that wasn't getting treated right or wasn't getting treated fairly. And that, as a leader, I always thought played a key role because, whenever I get too big for my britches, and I've told my co-host this before, I remember that in January 1985 on Winter Reforger in Germany near Gießen, my vehicle broke down, a steering gearbox snapped in my Dodge pickup truck. And so I sat for 12 hours waiting for a recovery team, but that went to my site and I didn't have the shot anymore. Someone else put the signal in. I was a backup. So I spent 2 or 3 weeks being a backup, being a gopher, and I was sent on guard duty for 2 hours. And I spent 14 hours in guard duty in sub-zero temperatures, freezing to death, chattering. And I remember whenever I get too big for my britches that I was so unimportant in 1985, they left me to freeze to death. So my point with that is that I think that the crucible of, and no one should have to go through a difficult childhood or challenges, but if you do, it really, I think, can give you an edge in being a great leader. I don't know, just quick thoughts on that before you get to John.
So, Chris, I couldn't agree with you more because when I was bullied, I could have taken two roads. I could have been a bully myself, or I could have protected people from being bullied. I chose the route of protecting people, and that is directly affecting with love. But when my studies, leadership can be learned. So if people that have never been bullied, or had extreme circumstance in their life, leadership can be learned. And that's what I want to do is share these lessons. Like Dr. Grain has these 5-step process, and I want to put down, bottle this up to share with leaders to understand that this is how you lead with love. And here's some great examples on how you do this. And so, yes, so that really shaped me growing up like you, Chris, and I couldn't agree more.
All right. Well, John, listen, I'm desperate to know if he wanted to open up that football too, because, I got to be honest, they only give me the football because I might use it.
I appreciate you passing the ball there, Chris, but I was going to leave the football discussion open for Todd. Actually, I'm really happy to hear this conversation because it seems to me in our society today, we lack real leadership, whether we're talking about in business, whether we're talking about, especially in government. And what you see is corporations that are following trends that are told to them by trade organizations. They no longer think it up themselves. They no longer dream it themselves. They no longer build their business model. They only use the business model they were given. And so everybody's got the same stinking business model. And if it's a failing business model, everybody's failing. Therefore, our whole country's tanking and nobody seems to catch on to this. So it's really nice to hear this kind of discussion because I think people really need to understand what true leadership is and what it means to think outside the box again. So I assume based on what you've said, your book is applicable to anybody out there in a leadership position, whether it's government, whether it's business. And it's kind of funny because you keep answering my questions as you talk more and more. So, what was it I was going to get to? I was leading up to something and
right.
I stumped myself.
But if I may jump in real quick,
yeah, go ahead.
Here comes the football question.
No. He brought up, suicide, and of course we've all probably dealt with suicide. My late best friend, he killed himself, and he was an Army paratrooper like myself, and of course had a number of friends and colleagues over the years who have killed themselves. So, and of course, being here at the American Legion National Convention, one of the things that we push is be the one right here. If anybody's watching, be the one. .org. And of course, if you are contemplating suicide, whether you're a veteran or not, you can dial the crisis hotline 988, just like 911. Dial 988. You can talk to somebody. And of course, if you're a veteran, you can press extension 1 and talk to a fellow veteran who's been through a lot of things you've been through, and of course, have been where you've been. So I just wanted to put that out there kind of as a PSA, if you don't mind. Kind of steering away from the book, if you will. But just if you are contemplating something like that, there are people that care about you, and we'll have that discussion with you. There is help out there. So just want to throw out there 988, and of course, veterans extension 1.
So Todd, if I could just talk about this as well. So I was at the Florida Chamber, and what we were doing is trying to make Florida the healthiest state in the country. And we know that people are going to be the incredible ingredient to make Florida the 10th largest economy in the world. And one of the things we looked at was mental health. Mm-hmm. And in Florida, it is one of the things that are really needed. But as I dove into this and started looking at this, where we're using the same playbook over and over again, the number of therapists, the number of psychiatrists, the number of beds, those are all important. But what I found is that we're not really addressing the toxic behavior in the workplace. Because when you don't have trust, there was a 2018 study by HBR, high trust versus low trust. High trust, there was 74% less stress. Burnout was reduced by 40%. Productivity, absenteeism, you name it, across the board. When you don't trust somebody because you don't lead with love, you're constantly on the alert and you're using all this energy, and you go home and you're thinking about your boss. Then you break out the bottle. You're thinking about this. You're not taking care of your children. You're not sleeping well. Next thing you know, you're contemplating suicide because you're just so fed up with life. Leading with love is part of the puzzle that can help reduce suicide. For the greatest gift that God ever given us is life for our people that we love. And so teaching people how to lead with love in all industries, in all communities, I know that this will help our suicide rates. In fact, I was just talking to somebody at the Bush Library here last week when I did my book tour. I won't mention her name because I don't have her permission, right. But she's a therapist. And so she knew this person was probably going to commit suicide. So what does she do? She loves this person. She knew this person needed support and purpose. So she buys this person a dog. Next thing you know, about 3 years later, the dog is the ring bearer at their wedding. And, this is what love is, this is how we cherish life. And so leading with love is a critical ingredient for any industry about how we can reduce suicides across the board.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I've got a question. So whenever I left, say, Fort Bragg to go to the White House Communications Agency, part of the White House Military Office, transitioning, working with soldiers and, of course, officers and, all the military folks. What was your experience leaving, say, the fleet, going to, say, the White House, dealing with a lot of civilians? And, of course, probably a lot of egos, I'm sure, at the upper echelons that you dealt with, especially working closely with the president, cabinet secretaries, and all these different folks. What was your experience, and what was your thoughts going into that?
So I only served underneath President Bush and Mrs. Bush.
Right.
And when I was there, he was a North Star, with the nicknames and just developing this love. Yeah. So my experience of other administrations, I don't have. But I would say it was easy because when you have that love from the North Star, it permeated throughout. And the collaboration, the innovation, the extra effort that you put in to make sure he was safe was just remarkable. And one of my greatest experience was working at that administration. And with civilians, we all, it was no difference to me. And so I would say, because President Bush led with love, and how he built these authentic relationships with other, those stories that you just said, Chris, how he talked to you and how he called you Waka Todd.
Right.
He made you feel like he cared for you. And when you care for somebody, you're going to go above and beyond to make sure the mission is complete, and you're going to make sure he's protected. And the job became easy because everyone else had each other's back because you wanted to have his back. So I hope that answers your question.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't want you to give anything away personally or whatever, but what's one of the best experience that you had, say, while serving at the White House, that you can certainly share with everybody, that kind of give you an idea of just like, man, you grew up being bullied, and here you go. Next thing you know, you're commanding submarines, and you're respected, and of course you're trusted with one of our nation's highest clearances, and of course you're carrying the nuclear football. You have to be one of the most trusted individuals in the entire nation at this point. What was the feeling of looking back at your life to where you were, and of course now you're at the White House, you're on Marine One, you're on Air Force One, and you got to be feeling something. What was those feelings that you had?
I have, I talk in the book that, I grew up on a farm. I've never thought that I was better than anyone else.
Right.
Sometimes I had to pinch myself because of the responsibility. I was on a ballistic missile submarine out of Kings Bay, my first tour, and I saw what the devastation that could occur if you launched ballistic missiles.
Yeah.
But then, here I am carrying the nuclear codes to authenticate. I was a piece of the puzzle. I was a critical piece to be able to execute potential Armageddon or saving the planet from a military strike. And so at times I needed to pinch myself to say, am I really here?
Yeah.
But one of the greatest things was to see how President Bush led with love. And I talked about this in a book. One of the things that I was there was during the surge, and I had to take the situation report when I was at the ranch. It would be 5 o'clock in the morning. I would step up, and first thing you'd always ask me at the situation report, it was 5 o'clock in the morning. It's just no, shirt, shorts, no socks, shoveled hair, just waking up, 5 o'clock in the morning, just me and him outside his Crawford Ranch house. And the first thing he'd always ask me is, how did we do? And he wanted to know, did we lose anybody last night?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, you're right.
And when I told him we didn't lose anybody, he would turn into like a kid in a candy store. Like, what are we doing today? Did you see Barney? I think he's out, just get so excited. And the days that I told him that we lost somebody, he would just take the papers in, and there was no press. There was just me and him underneath 1,000 stars of the Texas sky. And it really showed me that what a great leader he was. Empathy, how it affected him, making that decision to make sure that what we did wasn't in vain, and what he did for the world was just so important. So that was a big takeaway.
Yeah, I remember being on duty with, say, Vice President Cheney and putting together the PDB and delivering that to him. And he'd be like, well, what do I need to focus on? I'm like, sir, I don't try to read it. I just put it together for you. I said, you got to digest it for yourself, buddy.
Yeah.
I didn't call him buddy. I said, Mr. Vice President. And I'm thinking back in my head, I'm like, buddy, you got to read it for yourself. But, like you said, in those moments wherever you're flying on Marine 2, I'm sitting right behind the Vice President of the United States. I'd put my hand in my pocket and I'd kind of do like this, like, holy cow, this is so cool. A little guy, nobody from Northeast Tennessee. I'm sitting behind the second most powerful person in the entire world. This is amazing,
And,
felt good.
And as I reflect on this, Todd, Chris, and John, we're all the same. We are. Our experiences are so similar. We came up with upbringings that we didn't, and our experiences throughout the military, we all have the common sense. And what I did is I took the time to put it in this book, Leading with Love, and really, really reflect on my time of what we need through academic research. So it's just enjoyable to hear your stories as well, because you are exactly like me. And I'm so honored to be on this show.
Absolutely. And I think we're probably coming up on our commercial break, last probably 2 or 3 minutes or so. But what are some final thoughts that maybe you have? And of course, how can people buy this book? Where can they get a signed copy? Because I know I got to buy a signed copy for sure.
Thanks, Todd. I will send you one, obviously. But for those, you can go to the Ballas website or my website, as we talked about, www.navybob.com. Or if you want a hardcover, paperback, audio, or Kindle, you can go to Amazon. But if you want a signed copy, you have to go to the website, www.navybob.com. But I'm doing a book tour, and hopefully if there's a book tour near you, I'd be happy to be able to come to your location. And if you want me to come speak, I would love to come talk about leading with love at your organization.
There we go, folks. We'll be back at the top of the hour after the commercial break. Navy Bob, sir, thank you very much. God bless you. Fair winds and following seas, sir.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
Such
sir.
a pleasure.
God bless you.
WSMN 1590, WSMN 95.3 FM Nashua. Listen, watch, and stream at WSMN.live.
ABC News, I'm Daria Albinger. Why did he do it? That's what the FBI is still trying to figure out as it investigates the attempted assassination of former President Trump. Kevin Rojak, special agent in charge for the Pittsburgh field office.
We have a clear idea of mindset, but we are not ready to make any conclusive statements regarding motive at this time.
And they say Thomas Crooks looked into both the Republican and Democratic national conventions. Vice President Harris and her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, stopped at a barbecue restaurant in Savannah as part of a 2-day bus tour through battleground state Georgia. Republican Vice Presidential nominee J.D. Vance focused on the economy in visits to Pennsylvania and to Wisconsin. Israeli forces killed at least 10 Hamas militants in the occupied West Bank, sealing off the city of Jenin. Hotels in Grand Canyon National Park are closed after a series of breaks in the main pipeline that serves the tourist destination. This is ABC News. The death toll in the U.S. from listeria-tainted deli meats has risen to at least 8. The CDC says the latest fatal cases were confirmed in South Carolina, Florida, New Mexico, and Tennessee. At least 57 people have gotten sick from eating boar's head meats that were infected with listeria. A warning from Russia's foreign minister.
Sergei Lavrov reminding all that Moscow has protocols in place for using nuclear weapons, which he says American officials know very well. With regard to the Ukraine incursion into Kursk and the possible use of longer-range missiles, he adds the U.S.-led West is playing with fire, playing with matches like little children, a very dangerous thing, he says, for grown-ups entrusted with nuclear weapons in one country or another. Tom Rivers, ABC News, at the Foreign Desk.
The public agency called LA Care Health Plan will be teaming with an insurance provider, HealthNet, to build a system of doctors for the homeless in Los Angeles. ABC News.
Hey, checking in?
This is not just your flu shot appointment at Walgreens.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is getting your entire family vaccinated in one trip.
Hey, Mom.
And a snack on the way out. Get flu shots for everyone in your family. Together. Schedule appointments online today. This is wellness made easy. Walgreens.
Vaccine subject to availability and for ages 3+. State and health-related restrictions may apply.
As fall approaches, you have a lot to prepare for. Back to school, sporting events, family gatherings, and staying on top of your health. The virus that causes COVID-19 continues to evolve. So this fall, no matter what you're prepping for, you can prioritize your family's health and make a game plan for COVID-19 vaccination. Ask your doctor or pharmacist to learn more. Sponsored by Pfizer.
Explore more and spend less at Campers Inn RV. This month only, shop thousands of RVs under $29,999. But there's more. Browse hundreds of RVs priced at dealer cost exclusively for this event. But you must act fast. Once these deals are gone, they're gone for good. Experience Campers Inn difference and join thousands of satisfied customers. Unbelievable adventures and unbeatable prices begin at Campers Inn RV. Discount and finance offers subject to availability. Terms and conditions apply. With approved credit, see dealer for details.
Continuing the legacy started in 1904, Roger Pellerin of Gate City Monument Incorporated continues to provide the same high-quality monument, custom headstone, and stoneworking craftsmanship today that they built their reputation on over 100 years ago, servicing Nashua, New Hampshire, as well as nearby areas in Massachusetts, such as Lowell, Billerica, Chelmsford, and beyond. From creating custom monuments to memorialize, to landscaping and granite work or restorative services, each job is done to your satisfaction and is backed by decades of experience and integrity. If you're thinking about stonework, think Roger Pellerin. Gate City Monument. Visit online at gatecitymonument.com. Stop by and meet Roger at 321 West Hollis Street in Nashua, or call 603-883-7141. That's 603-883-7141. Gate City Monument. Memorials of distinction for people who care.
The views.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back with you. Well, if you're listening or just now tuning in, you're listening to Common Sense Conservatives right here, WSMN 1590, WSMN 95.3 on your FM dial. Guys, I'll tell you what, that was an interesting conversation. My question I was building up for was to ask him about his other influence besides academia and stuff like that, mentorship. And yeah, I mean, it's just so much that we could have asked him and got into too. It's just an incredible conversation, I thought. Have you seen the Google now is being accused of antitrust laws violations?
They did it. They're guilty.
It's about 20 years too late.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I mean, and I heard somebody say they'll never break them up. Yeah, they said the same thing about AT&T.
But here's the thing. I think we need to bring back Ask Jeeves. I really believe that needs to be the competitor to Google. I don't know. Yeah.
I it's Alta Vista and Yahoo Search. Yahoo Search was all manual though. People did it voluntarily. Yeah. But Alta Vista was incredible, I thought, in its day. And DuckDuckGo is the only real alternative these days that you can find.
No, there's a good one called FreeSpoke at freespoke.com.
Yeah, it's out there. I said DuckDuckGo is the only real alternative.
FreeSpoke is a real alternative as well as far as free speech and.
I'm sure it is for all 6 people that use it.
No, it's a growing platform. I like it for news because when you go to freespoke.com, what you get, and I use it a lot. I got pulled up here on this computer, and what you get is you do news on it, and you can go through the news and search the current news and stuff. It gives you the left, middle, and right.
Okay.
So you can get a broad perspective of it if you want to read the whole broad perspective of whatever article you choose. So I kind of like that instead of just bouncing around and knowing who's left, who's right, and all this other nonsense and playing these stupid games. They kind of lay it out there for you. So yeah, some of them are mainstream media, but at the same time, you know who's left, who's middle, and who's right. And then if you want to get that broad perspective and read on it and kind of read between the lines, but you read and put your own thoughts together. And that's how news should be, right? It shouldn't be tailored towards what I should be told to think. It should be giving me the news, the actual facts, and allow me to form my own opinion.
Yeah, but what about who's to say that can also at some point be twisted as well? You know what I mean? Oh, this is right, this is left, and I think it's up to individuals. And I always try to fall back on individual responsibility. I know that's something that's fallen by the wayside in our modern society for a lot of people, but shouldn't it be up to me as the individual to figure out what's right, what's left, what's factual, and what's basically a grain of salt?
They do measure media outlets and stuff on their bias. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Okay. Most of us can identify that on our own once we get familiar with them. Yeah, they but you've got Start Page was another one that's the free open, and they avoid some of the crankier sites and stuff, pornography and all that crap. And so there's a few good choices out there. Chris is right. DuckDuckGo is very popular and well known. They've advertised a lot through the years, and I don't shun them either. They're a very good search engine.
Yeah.
In fact, when people scrub their accounts, Google scrubs, because Google does that, they scrub search results. I find that DuckDuckGo is reliable, particularly in initial stages when Google tries to get rid of things. I've seen that with some news stories about Kamala Harris and about South Africa, where the media tries to hide what they've published on something or what's been put out there, and then Google, they're in collusion. They just pull the stuff. It's interesting to see Jeff Zuckerberg admit that Facebook was in collusion with the federal government, which violated our First Amendment rights. And I think it's time for a special prosecutor, and it's time for federal indictments against administrative officials in the Biden regime for violating our First Amendment right. Look, we're not going to cite U.S. Code Section 3.2. No, we're going to cite the First Amendment.
Yep.
That protects us against the government, not against private corporations. The government cannot abridge our right to free speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of worship. And they did that.
Yeah.
And they used third-party actors to do it. And that's what's so egregious about this. The government used private sector to be their agents to evade the Constitution. For that, people belong in prison, not fines, prison.
This is what I tell people, through legislative processes and stuff, or in this case, political action, they backdoor your constitutional right to free speech or sometimes privacy based on what the laws or the actions are of the government. And businesses don't have the same rights as natural people.
Right,
Therefore, information they hold becomes free to the United States government. They can subpoena that information. There's no getting a warrant for it. Todd, you're trying to get in here.
Yeah, but it's no different than say a prosecutor or a police officer telling a private citizen, "Hey, I need you to go break into this house and look for this evidence on somebody." You're acting as an agent of the government just the same. So you're violating somebody's First Amendment rights by extension. So this is the same thing. A private company is acting as an agent of the government, so it's no different than the government doing it.
Right. And the government, just because a private corporation owns your data, doesn't mean that they can automatically release it to the federal government or they can demand it. They have to have a warrant. We are protected from unreasonable searches and seizures. It's right there in the Bill of Rights. And if I go to Verizon and say, give me all the data for these 10,000 phone numbers for this period of time, they can't simply do that.
Right.
There has to be a warrant to justify that. Or I know what you're going to say, Telecommunications Act. It gets a little dicey there.
No, that's not where I'm going to go. But go ahead and finish your thought, and I'll go.
But you cannot. You can successfully argue unreasonable search and seizure and the fruit of the poisonous tree if someone acquired data they had no reasonable suspicion. Now, if they're just doing, if they got a warrant that covers a general theme about something, like some books taken out of a library, they're trying to figure out who took it, and they come across that, and then they discover other information, they can pursue that information. But they can't go no further than what they've acquired. They must now go get another warrant to go follow up on that. Go ahead.
Yeah. So my thing is we're going to go back to electronic logging devices again. Once again.
Oh, good Lord.
All right. So basically, when the government forces you to buy a device to use in your vehicle and say they got to track you with this device, but they're not doing it. It's a third party doing it. So it's not a violation of your rights. However, the third party, in order for you to use that device, requires you to sign away any proprietary information or data that you give on that device. So now they own it. You don't. They literally own that information and that data. Therefore, now it becomes subjective to the United States government to subpoena that information because that business doesn't have the same rights as you do. See what I'm saying? And in order to use it, every one of them, in order to use it, you have to sign away that right.
Businesses and entities are also protected by the Constitution. That's why the press has freedom of speech. You can't abridge the freedom of speech.
It's not the same under Commerce Clause.
Well, that's an interpretation of the Commerce Clause.
Hamburg versus New York, that's the case the FMCSA used, Hamburg versus New York. They were going in to investigate for stolen goods at a junkyard. And he made that same claim. His house resided on that property, but it was a salvage yard open to the public. And the police said, we don't need a warrant to investigate your property because you were a business. And he argued that and tried to take it to court. And the judge overruled him, saying no, because under the Commerce Clause, they have a right to search your place of business. They do not have a right to go in that home.
In 1896, Plessy versus Ferguson determined that separate but equal accommodations for blacks and whites was legitimate under the Constitution. It was not.
Right.
In 1972, the Supreme Court exceeded its writ and whole cloth decided that people could murder children in the womb, and that was a federal protection. It was not. It exceeded the 10th Amendment. Just because courts and judges violate the law based on ludicrous opinions doesn't mean it's right, and it can be successfully refuted. We've ended Roe versus Wade, and we've returned that responsibility to where it belongs, to the individual states. Sovereign states decide, the people decide whether they're going to have abortion or not and what the rules are, not the federal government. You couldn't deny people the rights on abortion.
That was the only one thing because of the federal ruling at that time.
Right, but the conditions of it could be set by the states. That's correct, but you couldn't deny it. That you couldn't make it illegal to have an abortion because that was the illegitimate, unconstitutional decision that the Burger Court reached, and for 50 years it stood. Plessy versus stupid decisions by the Supreme Court, 10 in the last half a century. Plessy versus Ferguson, 1896, not overturned until Brown versus the Board of Education in 1954 in Topeka, Kansas, setting it right. So listen, it happens all the time. I mean, look, we see this. We see a miscarriage of justice all the time. It doesn't make it right. And it does not change my interpretation of the Constitution. It's pretty simple, straightforward. You don't have to be a constitutional scholar there, Barack Obama, to understand the Constitution.
I can tell you what I've been told a number of times. Your interpretation don't mean anything.
My Smith and Wesson means a lot.
It does. It holds up quite a bit. No, I've heard mortgage brokers complain about it. I've heard trucking companies complain about it. When they come rolling in and they bust through those doors, they start making demands. You do what you're told. Because they hold your authority. You know what I'm saying? You got to have a permit to do business. You've got to file with them to do business. And if you don't do as you're told, you don't have a license to do business anymore.
No, I got you. We're dealing with an oppressive state right here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. For 6 months now, my veterans organization has been denied a renewal on a small games chance, which generates 70% of the revenue for the organization. As a consequence, we are in desperate financial straits now because of this clerk in the county and making us jump through hoops, none of which were required for any year previously. She came up with this ludicrous concept that our EIN, our taxpayer identification number for the nonprofit organization, was invalid. It was the incorrect title. Even though it's the same title, it's been there since 1947. So when we contact the IRS, they're like going through their dusty records, trying to find this stuff from 1947. And like, oh my gosh, this is a really old one. Yeah, it's from 1940s when this thing was issued. So, we got through all those hoops, 6 months of this nonsense, took everything that was required. By the way, this clerk, 4 different times when someone went down there, fabricated a new reason why it wasn't complete. Now, to be fair, those were legitimate concerns. Those other times, this report wasn't done correctly. But the clerk should have said from the outset, let me look at your application. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is incorrect. This is incomplete. Finish these things, bring it back. Never did that. Just jerked my people around. And now, when all the paperwork is right, when we've got the congressman involved, we've got lawyers involved, we got the letter from the IRS, we filled out all the paperwork. Every report is to the letter, dotted, T's crossed, and the I's dotted. Took it down today. Oh, no, you can't do that because this other EIN associated with this other organization is no longer has tax exempt status because the tax return isn't reported as being filed. Well, that has nothing to do with this organization. You're just making things up. This is an oppressive state. And guess where I'll be tomorrow? And guess who's going to get a fair share of my ire? Because this will not stand. It's time to file a grievance against these little trolls. I've had enough of them. By the way, speaking of trolls, Sergei Lavrov, did you catch that at the top of the hour there, John? Called us children playing with matches. This Biden-Harris regime is so embarrassing. We have Russians condescendingly talking to Americans now. We have nothing countries around the world thumbing their nose at us and putting the finger up and telling us this needs to end. We need real leadership in D.C. We need a country restored to its prominence. Pax Americana, baby.
The first thing we do, Chris, we all take a subscription of Beyond the Sea and start mailing it out to our members of Congress.
Well, it's not a subscription. It's a buy one.
The book.
Got that Bobby Darin song stuck in my head now.
It's a good song.
Play it to get it over with, huh?
Well,
it's a great song.
The last couple of days since I knew Navy Bob was going to be on the show, I kept playing it in my head. Somewhere beyond the sea.
Stop.
Okay,
I got an earworm.
right, sorry.
Got an earworm.
Oh, no, this goes with
John, did you see? I know you'll like this. Did you see the letter that Tucker Carlson sent to Kamala Harris? And his response?
I missed that one too. You're right. I've been under the weather, and I spent all day Monday. I never even woke up. I didn't eat anything.
My goodness.
I didn't drink anything. I stayed right in bed all day
Monday.
What?
You're gonna have to disinfect that entire studio, John. How dare you?
I'm on this end of it now.
Did you get your 37th jab?
That's probably what did it. Yeah.
Yeah, that would do you in. I never took a jab. I'm very happy to say, still surviving jab.
You're one of them.
And I say this in the sanctuary city of all places. I'll probably be accosted by the thought police or something downstairs.
One of them. No, but seriously. No, it's so Tucker Carlson purportedly sent this ridiculous comical letter to Kamala Harris. She posted it as if he did it. It wasn't posted as a joke. And it's clearly not a letter from Tucker Carlson. It's not his handwriting. It's not his signature, which many people have seen. And he also has a habit of dating his letters. But it's a fawning letter saying how wrong he was. So Tucker Carlson penned a fake letter back to her, and he dotted all the I's with little hearts for Kamala Harris. It's hilarious. It's on Twitter, folks. You got to go check it out. It's hilarious.
Yeah, Kamala. They're on a bus tour now down in Georgia. They thought they had Georgia in the bag. That was a place that they weren't even going to go because they have 2 U.S. senators down there. But now all of a sudden Georgia is leaning back towards Trump. It looks like it's 4 to 5 points, and it's going in the other direction now. And of course, Governor Kemp wisely got out of the Trump feud and basically diffused it by going out there and fawning over Trump and endorsing him wholeheartedly. And then, of course, Trump had to come back and say, Governor Kemp's a good guy, basically. And the feud's over, essentially, at this point.
Yeah, but Kemp is out there trying to undermine election officials in Georgia who put up some rules for a couple of counties. He's trying to have them removed. He's asked the attorney general, does he have the authority to remove because he doesn't like what they did. Not because they did anything illegal, but he doesn't like what they did. Kemp is a dangerous rhino.
Interesting. Okay.
Quick shout out. Hi, Myra Page. How you doing?
Hey,
Myra. Good to see you.
It's an ungodly hour for Myra. That's serious dedication to the program.
She just give us a quick hello here.
After
on,
2
I
a.m.,
think
man,
your
she must
YouTube,
be at the
either yours or
club.
Billy's.
Oh, hey, Myra, you said hi to me and John. All right, hey. I was going to give a shout out to her too. I saw in the little chat there. Yeah, good deal. I love all the people that are chatting on our StreamYard, and of course any other page that we're on. It's kind of neat that we're out there, and love all the guests that we bring on too. I know we're going to bring more on in the future. I think we got a good back and forth on how to bring on a guest, especially authors. You know, we introduce them, throw it over to Chris. He's let him question it.
Let's face it, Chris kind of anchors this show.
Oh,
and
yeah,
he's a great interview. He's good. I just saw his head swell just slightly for those who can't see the screen, but he does a good job. I mean, he's in depth interviewer. He
has other shows that he does throughout the week and throughout probably every day. You know, so I mean, why would we not, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sorry, my headphones won't fit any longer.
Keep talking.
You were saying, just keep it going
higher
there.
and higher.
So, you guys can keep talking. I'm not going to interrupt that conversation.
Hell Caesar.
Hey, Melania's got a book coming out, John. Did you see that?
Who's this? What?
Melania Trump has a book coming out.
Oh, does she?
Yeah, I know. Seriously, it's not a joke. She's got a book coming out, and apparently it's the number one seller already on pre-sales. It's her first ever memoir. It's called Melania. There you go.
Good
so
deal.
it's already hit Amazon on pre-sales, and it's like apparently skyrocketing. Just like Beyond the Sea. I wasn't kidding. There were 12 copies of the book left. Now I don't know if that's because they only stocked 20 in Amazon, or because it sold 10,000. But that's pretty good. Only 12 copies. It's good to hear.
Yep, absolutely.
I think everything the Trumps do seem to turn to gold at some point in time for them. Maybe not everything. There's been a few things that went down, but somehow they managed to make it pretty good. And I imagine she's highly intelligent woman, so whatever she writes is going to be good.
Speaks multiple languages, and remember back whenever Trump took office, and of course she was giving some of those first interviews, how the left, who loves immigrants, were making fun of her accent, who, mind you, speaks English better than probably a lot of Americans, and of course speaks multiple languages better than people from those countries, I dare say, and speaks it properly. They were deadpanning her and basically lambasting her because she has an accent. But I thought you loved immigrants, especially illegal immigrants, I'm guessing.
Well, and she speaks 6 languages. She was one of the world's top supermodels, highly successful, a mother, brought grace to the White House, the most attractive first lady in the history, no doubt about that.
Absolutely. Without a doubt.
Every time I see some idiot try to say that Michelle Obama is more attractive.
No, thank you.
If you want to argue Michelle Obama is attractive, you can make that argument. I probably won't agree with it, but you can make the argument. But not when you stack her up against Melania Trump. Give me a break, man. That's just
grace. She can walk so smoothly and gracefully and so nicely. Michelle Obama, I have seen her walk, dude. I've never seen a woman stomp her feet so hard on the ground and make things shake before in my life.
Right. But now we got to talk about Dr. Jill Biden. I mean, you see some of the fashion she wears, and all these people are fawning over her fashion. Oh, it's so great. It's so this and that. But they lambasted, like I said, Melania and her fashion. I'm like, she wears fairly, not just fashionable, but kind of respectable outfits.
Elegant.
She's
elegant.
That's the right word.
She is elegance defined. The woman is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it's. I mean, look. It's this. We know the dual standard of the press. Remember when 2016 happened, and we had Barron Trump, 12-year-old, and Rosie O'Donnell, that scumbag, evil shrew, telling the world that he had autism, which obviously he doesn't have. First off, I thought you're supposed to have compassion for people with a disability, like autism.
Because it's a disability.
Well, whatever it is, it's a condition. Call it whatever you like. Okay.
No, it's a thing.
You're supposed to have compassion for others, and you're not supposed to attack people for who they are. And that's exactly what she was doing, attacking a 12-year-old boy, because she's a vile, repulsive human being. It takes me. I almost can't say that she's a Homo sapien, but anyway. So she does that, and now Tim Walz, his son, acts like a demonic lunatic, and then they try to go, well, he has learning disabilities. I'm sorry, attention deficit disorder, hypertension disorder do not cause you to jump around like a clown like he did at that convention. So I didn't say anything about his behavior because I figured, I'm going to lay off. It's he's 17, so he's almost an adult, but I still don't talk about the family members of, people in politics because they didn't ask to be in this. They were drug into this.
Exactly.
Until Rosie O'Donnell starts opening her mouth and people start talking about Barron Trump again. And then the media comes out with all their lies. Well, it's because he has attention deficit disorder. No, that's why he doesn't pay attention in class. Okay? Yeah. That's not why he jumps around like a demonic crap weasel at a freaking, it's my dad, it's my dad. I'm like, you won the freaking lottery, man. The guy must have won $1 billion, No, but look, the left is just so, oh gosh. I mean,
did you
words for it, but you can't use them in polite company.
Did you see that video with Marjorie Taylor Greene talking about Raskin?
Who's
in there in committee and stuff, and he's just lambasted on the right and keeps complaining. Oh, you guys keep supporting a convicted felon, a convicted felon. You guys worship a convicted felon. She goes, ladies and gentlemen, I do not worship a convicted felon. I worship God, Jesus Christ. Ooh. That's who I worship.
That's a great comeback.
Now you want to sit there and talk about a convicted felon? The whole political left worshiped George Floyd for well over a year.
Yeah, they still worship him.
Burn down cities on his behalf, by the way, in his name. Let's be clear on that.
Assaulted women.
Committed multiple felonies. And at the same time, you talk about open borders. We had a briefing the other day and here at the American Legion, and I'm not bringing them into partisan politics, but we had an International Security Commission briefing. Had a guy, he lives on the southern border. He is a Legionnaire. And of course, he was talking about some of the things that he is actually doing. And I'm actually going to get him on the show. I'm not going to mention his name just yet because I again, don't have his permission, but I'll bring him on the show in the near future. And he was talking about some of the things that he deals with on the southern border and some of his neighbors, bodies of newborns just being discarded on these ranches, just thrown off to the side. That's not being reported on the news. And over the course of the time Biden's been in office, he says his neighbors and himself and others that he knows of probably have found nearly 100 discarded young fetuses or young bodies just thrown off to the side. Then some of them had just recently died, by being left to the elements. Some just being chewed up by coyotes or etc. And of course, they're leaving old people, elderly out there with broken legs, broken ankles, basically to fend for themselves. And of course, young people just throwing them off to the side and leaving them near death. That's not being reported on the news. It's being covered up. So this is the Biden administration. This is the Harris administration. She was the border czar. To me, if you're compassionate about people, you want people to come in the right way so this stuff doesn't happen, or at least eliminates a lot of it from happening.
We have governmental institutionalized human trafficking going on. This is what we've got. It's disgusting.
Yeah,
that's from the Biden administration. That's from political left. I am so on board with Donald J. Trump. Let's stop babying these people. Let's stop being soft and start killing people. Executing people who commit these horrendous crimes.
Right.
Let's sentence them to death. Let's not sit there and start coddling them about this nonsense anymore.
And he also talked about, the different young children that he's actually rescued. Because one of the things he does is he goes out there with groups of other people, and whenever these large caravans are coming through, these young girls that are being trafficked, he actually gets them and pulls them out of these rank and file, if you will, and rescues them and gets them into the hands of people who actually cares to be able to take care of them. And they interviewed some of these young girls, some as young as 9 and 10, been raped 19, 20 times on their entire journey up north. And some of them weren't raped at all because people were in this country buying these young girls for sex slavery and other things. And of course, they give them little wristbands and they're color coded. And each one of those means something different. Some of them means they're untouchable. They must be arrive as a virgin and clean. Some of them means that until they pay their money, they're fair game. To be able to be raped or whatever. And this young girl was describing, basically these horrific things that happen. And they're talking about, they don't understand the word rape or anything like that. And she's pointing to her genitals, her private parts, saying, they hurt me. And they're asking her, who hurt you? And they talk about the men, the basically talking about the cartels and describing what they did with them. They used their parts to my parts and stuff like that. Talking about describing rape, anal rape, things of that nature, just sick and gang rape, stuff like this. This goes on. And to me, the Biden and Harris administration are very much responsible for all this. I'll go back to that.
A lot of what's going on too, people don't understand with human trafficking, drugs are involved. You get these young women here in the United States of America, you get them hooked on drugs and stuff, and they have an addiction that they can't afford, and they're putting them in the streets to pay off their debts and stuff like that. They're forcing them to do this. And the same thing is down south. A lot of these people aren't sending their kids. Who in their right mind is going to put their kids in the custody of a bunch of strangers they don't know?
And think
going
about
thousands and thousands of miles away. That doesn't even begin to compute. That doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
They're taking these kids away because there's a debt involved.
But think about this: the number of young kids, especially young kids, that between the time that the Homeland Security deals with them, Border Patrol, the Customs Border Protection, etc., turns them over to Health and Human Services. There's been hundreds of thousands of young kids that are now lost in the system, unaccounted for, and they don't know where they're at. They're not reporting on that either.
They just admitted that they don't know where 318,000 minor children are that they've taken custody of.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this whole thing is a scam. I mean, and I'm so sick of this. You know, when Kate Steinle was murdered in San Francisco and the murderer got away with it, a multiple deported felon who had no business in this country, but they let him here. They just let him do it. And eventually he murdered Kate Steinle in the streets of San Francisco. And people forget about that. They want to talk about, you know, of course, what happened in Georgia, the nursing student, what happened in Maryland. That's all recent, but this stuff goes back a long time. And it's just unbelievable. We just have another situation in Florida where a criminal alien invader who's working for Amazon, it violated our sovereignty, has no business in this country, worked for Amazon, ran over a mother in a crosswalk with her 4-month-old child in a stroller and drove over them, threw the baby out of the stroller, landed in the street, continued to drive, tore the mother's head up, crushed her skull. She's alive, and just unbelievable. And this is a criminal alien invader, has no business in this country. So Homeland Security informed the media that Para Ovalis entered the country in 2019 on a tourist visa, which expired in 2021. Who gets a 2-year tourist visa to come to America? That's nonsense.
Right.
When I go to Germany, I only get 90 days. Why does somebody named Para Ovalis get to come in this country on a 2-year visa? That's nonsense. In 2021, after she overstayed her visa, she was granted temporary protected status. For what? What is she protected for? She came here as a tourist, not as a refugee, not as an asylum seeker. But the mother, they had to get a wet nurse to pump breast milk over the weekend because the mother was in ICU. They rushed the milk over to the baby, who somehow was unharmed. She has a catastrophic brain injury, a broken skull, and a brain bleed after being drugged by an Amazon driver who is a criminal alien invader who has no business in this country. And the left will always come back with this xenophobe. It's nonsense. If she wasn't here illegally, the woman wouldn't be in the hospital. The child would not have been in danger. Someone else would have had that job. Simple as that. You cannot make any argument that says anything different. Well, Americans commit crime. It doesn't matter whether Americans commit crimes at 10 times the rate of criminal alien invaders. One crime by a criminal alien invader is unacceptable because they're not supposed to be here. They're supposed to be murdering, raping, and killing people, running over people, and drunk driving at home in Kazakhstan, in South Africa, in Belgium, in Nicaragua, in Honduras. That's where they're supposed to be, not here. They have no business being here. Out.
And over the last couple of days, I've spoken to, some law enforcement, former federal law enforcement, FBI, and others, talking about the number of potential sleeper cells that are actually in this country, and they're not talking about just one or two or a few dozen. They think that there's probably hundreds of potential sleeper cells from around the world, not just that are looking to just blow things up, blow up the infrastructure, but deal with our power grid, other things like that. Not just kill people, but to wreak havoc across the country, whether it's dams, main arteries with bridges and things like that. Destroy these things from the inside, and of course the idea isn't for them to get out. It's if they get caught, they get killed, whatever. They're sacrificing themselves for what they believe in, and they're here in this country in great number because of this administration.
Yeah, no, they've destroyed our country and sold it down the river. Yeah, and speaking of selling us down the river, where's Joe Biden on the anniversary of his horrific, catastrophic, cowardly withdrawal from Afghanistan? He's on the beach in Rehoboth.
Yep.
So Donald Trump, a leader that he is, went to Arlington with Gold Star families. Yep. And he's criticized for it by the media. I don't even mention Joe Biden's not even there. He's not even looking at his wristwatch this time. He's not even present.
Right.
Unbelievable. And they're like, it's a campaign stunt. And yeah, exactly. Do you know what? If it is a campaign stunt, I don't care. At least he's there. Right. But he's also there when he was president.
Yeah,
when he would go to Dover.
Right. Yeah. Maybe a campaign stunt for sure. But guess what? He's a former president. Has every right to go and lay a wreath there without a doubt.
Well, and especially when the current president doesn't show up.
The sitting president, yes.
Exactly. I mean, can I go to Arlington Cemetery and lay wreaths if I want to? Can't just people go visit the cemetery?
Yes, but I mean, to be fair, it is definitely tied to his campaign. But to also be fair, he did this when he wasn't running for office. Right. After he left office, he went there. So it's just nonsense. Consistency from Trump, and of course they try to bring the nonsense about all military suckers and all this stuff. never said that.
No.
He said that about John McCain because John McCain attacked him, and Donald Trump retaliated in a juvenile fashion.
Yep.
It was inappropriate, but good Lord, we're talking about something happened 8 years ago. Get over yourself.
And he was trying to make a jab at John McCain of like, well, heroes don't get captured, basically, just kind of making a joke that fell flat for sure. But I don't think he's attacking anybody who actually has been captured or killed in combat at all. But it was a joke that fell flat.
Todd, I served under President Trump, and along with about 7 other presidents, but under President Trump, I never once. Yeah, exactly. Trent Johnson was president when I came to the Army. No, but no, not quite. But I never once, for one moment, during the time he was president, and I retired before he left office, just before he left office, and actually over a year before he left office. Excuse me. So my retirement letter is signed by Trump. I never once felt that he didn't respect the military. Did you?
No, not at all. And of course, I worked as a White House staff associate doing advanced work for him, and of course the vice president, and spoke to the man many times. He knew I was a veteran, and of course, I can't say that I had like a close personal relationship, but spoke to him many times backstage, just outside of the presidential hold room, and never felt that he was disrespectful in any way. And I saw firsthand how he dealt with veterans, especially those that were in wheelchairs, those who had had limbs missing, arms, legs, things like that, who dealt with PTSD. He dealt with them very respectfully, and he pushed his staff off to the side, pushing them away so he could actually spend time with them. And there was many times whenever he was supposed to be on stage on a rally, he's like, no, this is where I need to be right now. He spent extra time with them and let the crowd wait. He said, let them wait. They're going to hear what I have to say. They're going to be here. I need to spend time with these folks right now.
Well, I have to say that one thing that I'm very glad of, I mean, it sits in a closet upstairs, and once or twice I've been asked to show it online to my audience. Other than that, it's not framed or anything like that. It's along with all the other letters I got, like from the governor of Ohio and other things. Right. My retirement letter from President Trump, because you have to be a flag officer or an 06, or there's a couple other circumstances where you can get it to automatically get one from the president. But anyway, so that letter, I'm just so glad that it doesn't have Obama or Biden's signature on it. I probably would have torn it up.
Yeah. Well, my retirement paperwork that came was from Obama, because it was in 2016, just before Trump was elected. So,
yeah.
Oh well.
Well, that's it's still important stuff, but I was so glad that it happened. I was like, well, I have to retire in October 2019. Hey, he's still in office. Good, that's fine. I'll get his signature.
Yeah.
Right.
You didn't want to wait for that, did you?
But before George W. did leave the office, he did write a personal letter, kind of to everybody in the White House military office, and you could tell that it was heartfelt, and it wasn't typewritten. It was handwritten, and he sat there apparently at the Resolute desk and wrote this. And made sure everybody had gotten an official copy. So I do have a copy of that.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
The one disappointing thing I have is that my retirement came after George Herbert Walker Bush passed away.
Right.
And I tried to get a letter, but they're like, no, they can't do that. The president's dead. I mean, don't they have a form letter signed? But they said, no, they can't do that. So I didn't get a letter from him. I also didn't get a letter from Obama. They just ignored me. I did get one from Clinton, because you asked for the letter, you requested. I got a letter for retirement from Clinton, from Bush, and of course I got the actual retirement letter from Trump. Reagan had already passed away, so that just left Obama, and he just blew me off. They didn't say or do anything.
Of course he did. Obama don't care about any
all
military personnel.
Let me be clear.
And what does it take? It takes one staffer working at the presidential library who receives these requests, who processes them. The things aren't, I mean, for the most, sometimes they're originally signed, but it's not, I mean, my one from Trump is an original signature, but a lot of the times they're just form letters, but it doesn't take much to do it. Going back to what we talked with Bob in the first hour, it's about caring for people. It's about showing you're genuine. And a thing like that is really a big deal. I mean, when you give up 30 plus years of your life, and you put yourself at risk, the least that a former president could do is send you a form letter. I mean, good Lord. Come on.
Yeah, and I always remember, looking at the President Bush's his public and of course his private schedule, and Trump's as well, and seeing on there, the time that they set aside to sign those letters. Sometimes it's 30 minutes, sometimes it's an hour at a time. He signs them in bulk, mind you, but he'll sit there and sign all of them. It's not handwritten, or excuse me, it's not auto pen like so many other things. It's one of those things he actually signs, and you can kind of tell what the difference between auto pen, because how perfect it looks, and of course handwritten, because it's a slight variations of the signatures.
Yeah, but no, I mean, I got my commission under George Herbert Walker Bush. I mean, that's not when I entered the Army, right? Under Reagan, but or Johnson, if you believe that.
The first Johnson back in Lincoln's days.
Oh, Andrew, yeah, no, Andrew and I go way back. That's right. Yeah. No, I did ask him how the dinner was at Ford's Theater because apparently he missed that night.
How was the show, Mrs. Lincoln?
Yeah, no, but Johnson missed that night. No, but it's no. But anyways, but George Herbert Walker Bush was whom I received my commission from. That's my commission certificate, and it would have been so cool to bookend that 30 years later with a letter for retirement. But he passed away the year prior to my retirement. So anyway, such is life. Not everything's perfect. Besides, we all come, we're all gone. You know, Ed, Bob touched on something which I say oftentimes. You know, he said something. He wasn't quite getting to this, but the statement came out this way, so I'm just going to apply it. And we're all the same. We are. We enter the world, unless you come out in a C-section, we all enter the world the same way. You know, we're not grown in vats like what's that Keanu Reeves movie there? The
Matrix.
The Matrix. Yeah, we're not born and raised in a vat like in the Matrix. We come out of the womb one way or another, and we live. We're reared. We're taught right from wrong. Hopefully, we are fed. We're clothed. We're changed. We're protected. We're nurtured. Some more than others. Some not at all. We see what they grow up to be.
Yeah.
And then we pass from this earth at a point in time. So people need to not get wrapped around the axle and be so evil. Just work together and care for other people. That's what really matters here.
You got this little issue of psychopathy.
Huh?
Yeah, that 3% of psychopaths out
psychopaths.
That's mental. That's something.
Psychopaths. I mean, 3%. But I think the figure for Democratic leadership is around 70%.
More than likely, yeah. But if you think about it, 8 billion people in the world, 3% is a very, very high number. And I think depending on what regions of the world, it's higher. In the United States, we deal a lot with narcissists, sociopaths.
That would be over 10 million psychopaths in America if it's 3%.
Think about it.
Yeah, but you know what I miss? I got to be honest, guys. I got to tell you what I miss. This is what I miss the most, and I can't wait for it to come back. China. That's right. That's it. Good job, Todd.
Yeah.
I miss that.
Well, I'll tell you. I know some people who watch our show back in Tennessee. They're watching and listening right now. Ellie Carpenter. She's in sixth grade. I think sixth grade or seventh grade. Oh man, 12 years old. You dressed up today of what you want to be in the future, I think. And she dressed up as a politician, as a joke. She dressed up like Donald Trump in a way, but she won the contest. So she had a little costume on, not trying to be Donald Trump, but she was being herself as Donald Trump, if you will. So it's kind of cool. So she won her contest today, which is kind of cool.
Well, congratulations to her. I did see a video circulating on social media. Some little girl went to a Trump rally, like 4 or 6 years old, and she wanted to see Trump. She didn't get to meet him, so she was crying. She was upset.
So
it's like it's almost like watching Democratic Party leaders when they have to go sit and listen to Trump. That's what they do.
Yeah, right.
So nexus of thought here caught on to what I was saying. Most psychopaths are not violent, but 3% is a lot. Yes, it is. And the thing about psychopaths, which they mentioned, is lack of conscience. Which gives them certain advantages. They don't seem to have the same emotional.
Oh, no remorse.
Right.
Yeah.
No regret.
So when somebody's willing to go out and do things that are, I mean, just look, you got people like Kamala Harris alone. How does she sleep at night? Just saying the dumb thing she says. You'd think she'd be awake at night going, I can't believe I said that dumb stuff.
Well,
I'm ashamed to myself to the whole globe.
I think she uses a hot toddy and Ambien.
Yeah, but most dumb people.
Possible she has a sleep aid.
But most dumb people don't know that they're dumb, and they will argue with people who are smart, and they'll pull you down to their level and beat you with experience. That's why you don't get in these arguments with some of these people.
Well, I think the big secret with you're asking how Kamala Harris sleeps. I mean, seriously, I think it's Ambien. But the big secret with Kamala Harris that she doesn't let anybody know that she sleeps with 3mypillow.com pillows.
Oh yeah.
She's got the one between her legs. She's got the big one up on her head. And then her husband puts one over her face so he doesn't have to hear her snore.
Right, yeah. So she's got the slippers. She's probably got the robe. She's probably got a little bit of everything.
She's got the 85,000 thread count Egyptian cotton.
Right, yeah, that's it.
Myra's asking a question here about Billy Painter. Myra, I would know the answer to your question. You'd have to check with Billy on those. Did you guys happen to see what NBC did? This is under the here again, free spoke, and it's under their suppressed media. But podcaster Joe Rogan slammed MSNBC on Tuesday after the leftist media outlet posted a clip of Rogan late last month that made it appear that he praised Vice President Kamala Harris when he was talking about former Democratic Representative Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah, I heard something about that, but I haven't got a chance to read into it or watch anything about that. Yeah, but I did hear a clip about it. Yeah.
This is the issue with sound bites, is it not? How many radio shows you've been listening to and you get a sound? I even seen somebody do this to Barack Obama, is they use a soundbite to make it look like Barack Obama was really nefarious, globalist, elitist, and he was hating on the United States of America. And I'm like, at first I wanted to buy into it, right? Because I kind of look at him that way.
Right.
But then I'm like, wait a minute, this is a soundbite. So I went and found the whole video clip. When I looked at it, he was actually saying, and a lichen too. So they cut out this very vital part. And by doing so, they changed the whole context of the meaning of his language. And you see this all the time. And so here MSNBC is trying to sway an election by using something Joe Rogan said, because he's very, very popular and famous, to hold it in a light like it's towards Kamala Harris when he was actually talking about Tulsi Gabbard. It's kind of ridiculousness on their part.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, it's kind of like anything. You know, people say you can say something nice about anybody or any group or whatever, but you got to be careful when and how you say it. You know, and it's like this is the kind of a comedian talking about this. He goes, it'd be like saying something nice about the Nazis, and this was a Jewish comedian. He goes, hey, they had a nice tailor, they had a nice look on uniforms, but that didn't mean I supported the Nazis. But just take that out of context. Somebody could say, oh, this guy supports Nazis. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah,
exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
No, they do this all the time. I've seen it. I also saw someone try to pull this crap against something I said, completely out of context. But it's what they do. They have a lot of time in their hands, and people pay them for it. So more power to them. They'll rot in HE double hockey sticks. That's what I want to say. Yeah,
we got a call coming in here.
All right. Hello, caller. Dead air. Oh, but yeah, I'm looking forward to bringing on more guests, especially more authors into the future. I think it brings a different dynamic to the show, and of course we, instead of just talking about Democrat politicians the entire 2 hours and railing on what they have to say, because it's a bunch of garbage. I mean, heck, we could just say a bunch of things right now negatively about them, and guess what? They would apply between now and then the election and in the next several years. We could just play the same sound bites over and over and never have to appear on air live again if we did something like that.
Well, I suppose that's a true statement.
Yeah, I'm just filling the air right now until John brings the caller on.
So yeah, guys, I got Dan on. Your line is open, Dan. He wants to talk a little bit about we had a gubernatorial debate here with AI and Morse, and Dan's got the juicy details.
There we go. Bring it.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about Blackstone Kelly Ayotte, and the thing is we've already covered the fact that Blackstone's funding her campaign. They're bankrolling it, actually. But I was looking at her when she was Attorney General. She failed the YDC victims that were being sexually abused. She covered it up, okay, and she failed the kids. She did nothing, okay, but because of that, we have these pedophiles walking around New Hampshire that never paid for it. And I was looking into the fact this guy who was a state-appointed attorney that was supposed to defend these children, his name's David Vincianzo, okay? He was a several-time donor to guess who? Blackstone Kelly Ayotte. Yeah, you got it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you were thinking? You got it. So was he really working to defend these children? Was he really trying to represent them? I don't think so. Just like we thought at the beginning that Blackstone was funding bankrolling their campaign.
So hang on a second, Dan. So wait a minute. YDC is Youth Detention Center, correct?
Yeah.
And so these young people, minors, are kept at this youth detention center, and they're being sexually molested and abused here at this detention center by very many of the staff. And Kelly Ayotte at the time was Attorney General, and she was notified of this, but she did nothing to handle this circumstance for investigative purposes or anything.
She helped cover it up. That's what she did do. I know that. Yeah, that's what happened.
And so this guy who was a representative, so I assume he was supposed to be like what do they call that? There's a term for it when you have an attorney representing the interest of a minor.
And yeah, I know I'm blanking on the legal term, but yeah.
But this guy was supposed to be acting in the interest of all these minors, and you're saying he basically colluded to cover this thing up, and he is a donor to Kelly Ayotte.
Yeah. It's if you look it up, you'll find that he's a donor to Kelly Ayotte. Yeah. It's you'll find it on We the People in New Hampshire. Matter of fact, I've seen some people actually post it recently. Not too long ago. I can even try to get you the link if you want.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I've been hearing a lot about this. We the People is a Facebook group here in New Hampshire. Well, you can find it anywhere on the internet, but it's a New Hampshire-based Facebook group, and they do a lot of research and a lot of studying on these issues and these matters. And in this race right now, they are very, very supportive, obviously, of Chuck Morris. In which case, I am the same way. Before we started talking about this, I brought this up about Blackstone and Ayotte and some of our other board members and stuff. And ironically, Dan come along and he's talking the same thing. We all seem to be seeing the same pattern here. I can tell you, as senator, she was completely and totally useless to us. Many people have complained that they've tried to address issues with Ayotte, and she could care less about her constituents. And she didn't care about her constituents as senator. What is she going to think about you as governor of this state?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very concerning that she's even running. The
interesting part is she's not going to be a governor for the people. She's going to be a governor. She's on over 12 boards of different companies. Should she be a governor for the corporates? That's what kind of governor she's going to be. And she's bought and paid for by everybody. And these fake polling that they're running in the state is a joke. Everybody knows that Arbella, corrupt organizations like Arbella and Act Blue fund these things, and George Soros and the Rockefellers. And the thing is, the name of the game to these polling things are to suppress the vote, keep the voters home, make you think it's impossible to keep the numbers close to set up the steal. And we know with the Governor Sununu versus Daniel Richard, they refused. They still haven't ruled on that case. Okay. And it's the dirty Attorney General, Gordon McDonald, who's the head Chief Justice that's hearing that case. So all these Supreme Justices are appointed by Sununu, and he's going to try to steal this for Kelly Ayotte. Okay, Blackstone Kelly. That's who he's trying to do. She's going to run on the same things that he's been doing. And we get these 15-minute cities that they're trying to put into New Hampshire. They're already entrenched in Nashua. They're entrenched in Salem. They're entrenched in Portsmouth. They're entrenched in Durham and Concord. And they're going after Manchester right now. Mm-hmm. And I called out that mayor, Jay Rouet. I had my suspicion this guy was another dirty politician, okay? And he's tied to Dean Kamen, just like Kelly Ayotte. Dean Kamen and Governor Sununu went to the World Economic Forum for meetings on 15-minute cities, on welcoming cities, on smart cities. They're all tied in together. Dean Kamen is a big donor to Kelly Ayotte. So she's going to continue the same stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. She's bought and paid for, brother. I gotta cut you loose because we're so short on time. But I thank you so much for coming in and filling us in on this.
Absolutely. One more thing.
Okay, real quick.
Live free with Chuck Morris for governor, or die with Blackstone Kelly Ayotte.
There you go.
That's it.
Thank you.
Good. That's good. I always enjoy his input, and of course, paying attention to New Hampshire politics. And that way, I don't have to ask John what's going on in New Hampshire. He just calls in and gives it to us.
He does it for me. It's great. I love it.
Go. Yeah.
I just need a few more people.
Yeah. Do you pay him off to do that for you? So
no, he's more than he actually helps chase around different radio shows to talk about these sorts of things.
Hey, that's good.
Nexus of Thought come up with the terminology we were looking for was it says litation guardians. I think the term I was looking for would be guardian at litium or something like that.
Litigation guardians.
Yeah, I think that's what. Oh yeah, he corrected right there. Litigation guardian. Yeah. So at any rate, yeah, but in this case, it would be for the whole group of children instead of being one person. No, I mean that's pretty interesting stuff, and yeah, I do like it when Dan comes in and gives us a recap or a top off.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff.
Well, I've just lost my YouTube channel, but that's a whole other story.
What do you mean? What did we do wrong? What do we do now? Don't they have an edit option on YouTube where you can go back and edit something out if we just screw up?
He used the word steal and the big E.
Oh yeah.
You can't say that on YouTube. You can't
So
say
yeah,
that.
that's right. He
the
said
way
keep-
some of us end up using YouTube, because, and you're right, I don't have a great following YouTube because I don't invest anything into it. But the way you keep from getting it shut down is you have to go take your shows back off. Now you can edit them and put them back up.
See, only that's not true. My original channel was deleted over a video that didn't exist because I deleted it, and 30 days later, they removed my channel, gave me a third strike, telling me that it was still on their server.
Yeah, but that one, they removed your channel, then put it back on, then give you another strike on top of it. So you got 2 strikes for one. I say remove your channel, make your content. They removed your content, gave you a strike, removed your content, then decided that it was okay.
That's a whole other one on my current channel. But on my original channel, that channel was taken down. I removed 43 videos out of 1,800 that I'd done in 9 months because they were becoming difficult. And so what I did is just removed everything that might be cheeky. And then 30 days later, I came back, removed my channel for a video that was removed a month prior. So I know that Right Side Broadcasting does this. And I think maybe now it works because the censorship regime has eased a bit at YouTube. But I can tell you from personal experience that that's not a guarantee. It doesn't matter whether you put something on YouTube by mistake or even if you put it on, it's private. They scan your content and look for things to take you down. Not so much now, but they were doing that 2-3 years ago. Trust me.
I got shows. I got to go take them off. It's because they will. They'll gig you for it. And it's pointless. But Nexus of Thought, Sununu's dad was tight with Bush Sr., wasn't he? Yes.
He was chief of staff briefly, I believe. I don't know how long he served as chief of staff, but I do believe he was chief of staff in the Bush 41 administration.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, cool.
Good question. Yeah.
So what do we got? We got we got about 4 minutes left, 3 minutes before that little music thing kicks us out of here.
Absolutely.
What else we got going on here, guys?
No, I just think maybe we edit some of the things that play on the stream channel here whenever we stream it on the different social media platforms. Some of the things that are not applicable anymore. Maybe we look at that. I don't know if we could. Maybe we'll talk about that offline, of course. But maybe take a peek at that. Other than that, I think we got a good dynamic here, don't you think?
I think so. YouTube will gig you. Facebook pretty much just reduces your reach. That's why we get 3 listeners or viewers on there. We just say what we want to say. I'm sorry, man. This is just how I am. I was born this way. Remember when I was telling you about running from the cops and stuff? It's not like I was being nefarious, robbing a bank or something stupid, right? We were just goofing around as kids. That's how we were. We're just free-spirited kids. We were always just free-spirited. We weren't doing anything wrong necessarily. It was just the cops showed up and we're like, hey, cops, let's run. And so they took chase. It's just dumb stuff like that. But I've always been a free-spirited person. If I'm going to say it, I'm going to say it. I don't care about the consequences. I don't care if it hurts your dangly little feelings. That's just how life is. Your feelings are not my responsibility. Just the same way nobody's ever treated me in my life. They never said, hey, man, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but, they just said what they wanted to say. And if it hurt your feelings, well, get over yourself. That's just how life is.
Mm-hmm. Bingo.
Well, that just seems a little too harsh for me.
Yeah, right. Chris Wyatt is hurt.
Oh, my feelings are so injured.
What you just described there, running from cops or whatever. It's like those movies where somebody, the cops start chasing somebody just because they're running. It's like, hey, stop that guy. It's like, why?
Right.
What for? What reason? Why am I chasing you?
The guy's being chased by bees, and here comes the cops. Get him! He's running.
Yeah. Why am I pulling? And then all of a sudden they end up pulling a gun and shooting the guy on these movies, and it's like, why did you chase the guy? What was the point? Did anybody call you to his crime scene, or just somebody?
I just see that they did the takedown of some kid who was surfing on a beach in Jersey. There, he didn't have a $12 beach pass or something like that. So the cops,
oh, geez.
Yeah, it was pretty wicked to watch the video. It's all on body cam.
Yeah,
there's no driving on the beach. You mean you just got to have a $12 beach pass to walk on the beach in New Jersey?
Surfing, yeah.
He was surfing. He came out of the water, and the cops came over and said something about it was a private beach or a public beach. I don't know. You had to have a badge. And he's like, and so they're going to arrest him. He's like, "You can arrest me for what? I didn't do anything wrong." He's like, "You can't be here." He said, "Okay, I'm leaving." And then they chased him down, and they tackled him, and they arrested him, and people were freaking out over it.
I never understand this stuff. It's like it's a body of water out there. It's called an ocean. Does anybody really own the ocean?
No,
without governments, we could have just wandered freely, unless a mastodon got in our way.
Right.
Well, mastodon might have been an issue.
Yeah, we create so many rules, regulations, and stuff to control people, for no reason. I mean, if you're not bothering anybody, their person or their personal property, what government should just stay the heck out of the way, let people just do what they're going to do, and instead of trying to sit there and impose regulations because, well, I believe this certain way, I believe this way, that's great for you. You stay in that lane. But anyway, I'll shut up.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I guess that's our bit for tonight. That's all we got for you. I'm sorry we can't stick around and give you more, but that's just how it goes. Catch us next week, same time, same place, and we're gone.
WSMN 1590, WSMN 95.3 FM Nashua. Listen, watch, and stream.